Caribbean news desk, I'm Dennis Chabrol. First, the headlines. Dominicans vote in general elections. Alliance for Change will welcome a partnership for national unity and a broad-based pro-democracy alliance in Guyana. Trinidad and Tobago hires plane to take back several illegal immigrants to Africa. The international price of oil is dropping, but Antiguans and Barbudans still paying high prices at the pump. Details coming up.
We are one Caribbean, one people, one nation, facing the same destiny. Too separated we are, as one let's come together. One market economy, Caribbean is how it should be. Let's support Caricom for Caribbean unity. It takes you. It takes me for Caribbean unity.
Dominicans on Monday voted for a new government of their choice in what was up to news time a peaceful election. Reports out of Dominica are that there was a heavy voter turnout to decide whether incumbent Prime Minister Roosevelt Skerritt and his Dominican Labour Party should be given a third straight term. His opponent is Lennox Linton of the United Workers' Party, whose campaign centred on alleged corruption, mismanagement and nepotism. Dominica's permanent representative to the Organization of American States and his country's ambassador to the United States, Hubert Charles, said he was pleased with the response by voters.
I can report on the enthusiasm, but still the peaceful demonstration. Groups standing side by side, red and blue standing side by side and advocating for their own cause, but doing it in a way that was peaceful. So I think that is for me quite positive. And this is my polling station, and this is the third time I think I've come. I think there's a high level of maturity in terms of how the people approach their civic duty.
Dominica's permanent representative to the OS, Hubert Charles, clear indications about the outcome of the elections will begin emerging around 11 o'clock Monday night. Guyana's small opposition Alliance for Change, or AFC, appears to have shifted from its position of teaming up with a Partnership for National Unity, or APNU, to vote the incumbent People's Progressive Party Civic out of office. APNU has welcomed the AFC's shift. Addressing the opening of the AFC's delegates conference at the weekend, party leader Kemraj Ramchatan said a pro-democracy movement should include APNU as part of a true government of national unity.
On that score, then, hard decisions have to be made. And indeed, the AFC is ready to enter, if necessary, into negotiations and to lead a pro-democracy alliance of progressive forces that should comprise of civic groups, workers' unions, political forces. And by political forces, here we are talking about even PPP members who have been disenchanted with the performance of the PPP thus far, and even APNU.
He sought to justify the AFC leading such an alliance, saying that his party's leaders have integrity and have developed concepts on constitutional reform and governance. APNU General Secretary Joseph Harmon preferred to welcome the AFC's decision to embrace APNU. He concedes that the numerical strength of APNU must be taken into consideration.
Is the numerical strength of the APNU anything to go by in terms of determining what role it would like to see itself play in such an alliance?
I believe that should be a consideration. I believe that should be a very strong consideration as we go forward. But as I'm saying, I welcome the idea that the ESC is actually taking that step to recognize that it needs to work with other groups, political parties and other groups, in order to get rid of the PPP. Leadership is something which I believe in the fullness of time, the parties can actually work on that.
The AFC, which has been tapping into the traditional East Indian base of the ruling PPPC, had in the past ruled out teaming up with the Afro-Guyanese-dominated APNU, whose major partner is the People's National Congress Reform. The PNC had ruled Guyana from 1964 to 1992, a period that was widely regarded as a dictatorship characterized by human rights abuses, including suppression of the media and political opponents. Trinidad and Tobago chairman of the Emancipation Support Committee, Caricom-Cuba, is today condemning the way in which several illegal immigrants were deported to Ghana and Nigeria over the weekend. Caribbean Airlines plane was chartered at a cost of more than $410,000 or 2.6 million Trinidad and Tobago dollars to deport illegal immigrants back to Ghana yesterday, following a marathon 12 hours of hearings before the Trinidad High Court and the Court of Appeal on Saturday in a bid to stop the flight. Caribbean Airlines Flight 763 departed Piarco International Airport around 7 a.m. Sunday, with approximately 15 illegal immigrants from Ghana and some 12 special branch officers aboard. Our Trinidad correspondent Andrea Perez tells us more in this report.
Trinidad and Tobago chairman of the Emancipation Support Committee, Caricom-Cuba, says the illegal immigrants were sent to their homelands dirty and without a cent in their pockets. Mr. Camban slams National Security Minister Gary Griffith for spending millions of dollars on the chartered flight to take the men back to Africa and then advising them to reapply to be regularized.
If you wanted to know if the people could have were properly married or not, you didn't have to waste $2.6 million to send them back home without a cent in their pocket. Only one thing of clothes on the back. And now you're talking about them having to find $20-something thousand to be able to come back to Trinidad and Tobago if you decide that you will allow them back in the country. It is all absurdity.
Meanwhile, TNT's National Security Minister Gary Griffith is reminding that pursuant to the laws that govern immigration and naturalization in Trinidad and Tobago, persons who have been found to be in this country illegally have already been put on notice that such law breaking would not be allowed to continue.
The situation that is affecting national security and is affecting the state. We are losing billions of dollars annually, and over 10% of the adult population, they are not regularized, which means that they are not paying tax.
Also speaking on the matter was Attorney General Anadram Logan, who said that the action by the state was warranted and stressed that there was no witch hunt against immigrants. I am Andrea Perez reporting from Port of Spain, Trinidad for Caribbean News Desk.
The 15-nation Caribbean community, or Caricom, is proposing the building of a transportation system with Cuba to maximize trade across the region. The idea was placed on the table of the one-day summit of Cuban President Raoul Castro and his Caricom counterparts. The two sides are examining, among other issues, how to make the 14-year-old Caricom-Cuba Trade agreement more effective. Addressing the opening of the summit Monday morning in Havana, Caricom chairman Antiguan and Barbuda's Prime Minister Gaston Brown floated the idea of jointly developing a transportation system.
Central to such machinery is effective and affordable transportation for the movement of goods and people between our countries. In this connection, I call in this summit meeting to place high priority on creating mechanisms to move goods, services, and passengers throughout our countries. I'm convinced that if Cuba and Caricom countries can jointly build a transportation network, all of our economies will benefit.
Transportation has long been a major humbug to regional trade. Mr. Brown also hopes that an effective transportation system will not only result in increased movement of goods, but also tourists. Meanwhile, Cuban President Raoul Castro on Monday called for revising and updating the trade and cooperation agreement between his country and the Caribbean community to scrap its tariffs on 300 products. A Caribbean economist is warning residents in Antigua and Barbuda not to expect lower prices at the pump unless and until it benefits the government's coffers to make that change. The price of oil has dropped over 40% this year, from about $100 a barrel to around $60 in recent weeks, with prices expected to stay low for some time and consumers across the world are seeing the benefit of lower fuel prices. But Caribbean Economic Advisor to the Commonwealth Secretariat, Travis Mitchell, says the government in St. John's is likely to only lower the price of gas when it decides that by doing so, it will generate enough of an economic boost in the country to increase its overall tax yield.
It really depends on that trade-off. Is the cost gain of a lower oil price more than the losses to government due to less revenue from consumption tax? And that will be the main decision point for government in terms of whether to lower prices at the pump or not, because that in itself is the transition mechanism, or part of the transition mechanism by which oil prices affect consumption in the Caribbean.
The government sets the price of gas at the pump by deciding how much tax to charge, and has in the past lowered its tax rate to decrease its effect of higher global oil prices. Last week, Junior Finance Minister Lennox Weston said the government would be keeping the price steady despite falling global oil prices so it could get more in taxes and improve its financial situation. West Indies Oil Company CEO Gregory Georges says many mistakenly believe that the West Indies Oil Company controls the price at the pump.
West Indies Oil does not determine the price of fuel at the pump. What it is, we have there's something called a price build-up. So basically, West Indies Oil has a regulated margin, which is fixed by the government. So therefore, the government is the one who really determines the price at the pump. And you heard Mr. Lennox Weston last week mention the fact that he'll be holding prices basically stable for the time being. Because remember, as the price goes down, the government consumption tax basically goes up, and reverse, as the price goes up, the government consumption tax comes down. I think he used the argument that for years, the fact that the price was going up and the price will stay stable, it means that the government basically subsidized with their reduction in consumption tax over the years. So I think his policy is to try to recoup some of those losses.
Britain's Prince William visited the White House on Monday and was received by President Barack Obama in the Oval Office. The prince's wife, Kate Middleton, stayed in New York. The Duke and Duchess of Cambridge, who are expecting their second child in April, arrived Sunday in New York for a 3-day visit. Around 10 a.m., the Duke arrived at the White House and was greeted at the presidential residence by Vice President Joe Biden and his wife Jill. Later, the grandson of Queen Elizabeth II had a brief meeting with Obama in the Oval Office. Smiling, the two spoke in a relaxed manner before the cameras, but made no statement to reporters. Before returning to New York the same day, the prince was to deliver a speech at the World Bank headquarters about the fight against the illegal trafficking of wild animals. In New York, the Duchess of Cambridge visited Monday a children's center in Harlem with Shirlene McRae, wife of Big Apple Mayor Bill de Blasio, and was to lunch with British artists and entrepreneurs who live in the city. In the afternoon, William and Kate were scheduled to attend a reception organized by the Royal Foundation and the Clinton Foundation, which will be represented by former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton and her daughter Chelsea. The royal couple were expected to wind up the day at an NBA basketball game between the Brooklyn Nets and the Cleveland Cavaliers. On Tuesday, the Duke and the Duchess will visit the monument and museum dedicated to the attacks on September 11, 2001, and will be dinner guests at the Metropolitan Museum of Art.
We are 15 states with a common goal, a unified purpose to face the world, enriching lives, empowering people, creating a strong economic region. No matter where you're from, no hassle, just freedom. Whether business, school, or pleasure, we will benefit together. The Caricom single market, good for you and me. The Caricom single market, good for you and me. The Caricom single market, good for you and me. Oh yeah.
And that's it for this edition of Caribbean News Desk. Don't forget you can visit us on our website at caribnewsdesk.com or our Facebook page at www.facebook.com/caribnewsdesk. You can also find us on Twitter at twitter.com/demwaves. If you'd like to advertise with us, drop us a line at caribnewsdesk@gmail.com. Thank you for joining us. I'm Dennis Chabral.